So we looked at service contracts. These were the main areas of contracts that we looked at: ICT, FM, business process. We weren't looking so much at really the outsourcing of, say, adult social care. That kind of outsourcing wasn't really so much what we were looking at. We included PFI and non-PFI. We weren't interested in distinguishing whether a contract was PFI or non-PFI. But the point was, it was all about contracts in their operational phase. So our interest started at the point the contract was let. And then, just to get across the importance of service contracts in government to the public sector, and I guess there's a number of dimensions to that. There's the length of them. So the contracts we looked at 97 contracts, where we can't look at everything. So we chose to look at the three categories you can see here, as I've mentioned: ICT, FM, and business process outsourcing. 23 billion spent on these, we reckon, across the public sector, of which 12 billion was in central government. But I should say, the focus of our work, our remit focuses mainly on central government and the health service. There's the audit commission that cover local government. But actually, I think there's quite a consensus that the analysis we've got, the findings we've got, the recommendations we've got about how this could be improved are just as relevant to local government as I think they are to central government. So just chatting to Colin before this, he was certainly strongly of that view, I think. So how that broke down in just a little bit more detail without dwelling on it. The biggest chunk for central government was ICT, big chunk of facilities management in there. You can see the data. What we did, one of the things we kind of went into this, certainly I went into this not necessarily knowing a huge amount about contract management. What we were doing initially was looking for assessment criteria, frameworks to use for us to make judgments about how well managed some of these big outsourcing contracts were. And actually we were quite disappointed that there wasn't a lot that we could really use. So what we did at the start of our work was invested quite a lot in building an analytical framework that we could use for assessing contracts and how the contracts were managed. A bit more about that in a sec. We also ran some surveys. We ran surveys of commercial directors, of the contract managers for the 97 contracts we looked at, account managers on the supply side, some private sector case studies as well, because we wanted to just get a sense of what the public sector could learn from the private sector. We're not necessarily of the view that the private sector is any better at this than the public sector, in fact. But from our case studies, there were definitely some specific examples of really good practice that we thought the public sector could usefully adopt. One good example is in our published report. Lloyd's TSB was one of the organisations we looked at. We thought they had a really good programme for training contract managers, a really good structured approach to providing training for the people in their organisation that were going to be managing their larger contracts.